Two Wheels this week, Jeff takes a ride on Kawasaki's latest naked muscle machine. Richard Hammond concludes his tour of the Scottish Highlands and Islands. Wayne has a top tip on how to secure your bike in the middle of a field. And there'll be more from this year's Copdock Classic Bike Show in Suffolk.
Now, when a company like Kawasaki Heavy Industries, who are also into aeroplanes and ships, decide to make motorbikes, you can expect them to be big and brawny. And not to disappoint, we've now got this, Kawasaki's new ZRX1200S. It's what it says on the fairing. Of course, any 1200 is big, but although the ZRX certainly looks the part, it doesn't feel big when you're on the road. That's partly because you sit in it, not on it, and partly because they've designed it as an all-rounder, a semi-tourer if you like, so it has to be manageable. Now, part of the attraction of these big muscle bikes is that you can see the engine, big and brawny as I said earlier, and this one's no exception. These aren't fins, by the way, these are just for the looks. It gives us this traditional sort of retro look, so it's liquid cooled of course with those pretend fins on there. And this engine is completely new. It's now 1164cc as against the old one, which was just 1052cc. It's got a new cylinder head, new blocks with ceramic liners, reduces the width of it and makes the engine much lighter. And while I'm talking of lighter, these aren't magnesium cases. It's just a magnesium paint finish to make it all look a bit techy in the old macho look. Another thing to note, it's got carbs, no fuel injection on this one. In general styling terms, the big quacker goes back to the early 80s, the days when the likes of Wayne Rainey and Eddie Lawson raced and drifted big bore road bikes in the American Superbike series, but that's where the similarities end. Engine-wise, it's bang up to date. It's big, 124 brake horsepower motor, but it's not at all edgy. Give it a handful and it'll fly, but you don't have to work it hard to get your smiles. Short shift it through the 5-speed gearbox and use a wide spread of power to get the most smiles from your miles. As I've said, sitting in it, not on it, puts you in command, and the high wide bars emphasise that effect. It's very much a traditional feel. But traditional feel or not, don't let that fool you, because this frame, this might look traditional, but it's brand new. It's steel tube, but it's brand new and it's doing its job. The rest of it is bang up to date. Front forks there, they're fully adjustable. You've got the preload on the top and the rebound damping, down at the bottom the compression damping. 6-pot calipers, big 320mm discs, so all bang up to date stuff. And this fairing as well, this is all new. Big fairing with twin reflector lamps in there. I'm sure you've seen lamps before, but nevertheless, there they are. Gives a very good spread of light. And then inside this, you've got a very neat, brand new layout for the clocks. Now, no digital display on this one, and the one thing that I don't like on it, see the old speedo, that's really crammed up as far as the numbers go, and they're very small, and they're orange on black. And if you're trying to read the kilometres, which are blue on black, that's incredibly difficult. And earlier, when the sun was out, in my face, with a dark visor on, trying to pick up all that lot was very, very difficult. But nevertheless, there they are. It looks very neat, doesn't it? And over there you've got your fuel gauge and temperature gauge and then your old idiot lights. But coming back here, you've got these big wide bars and it's a really nice feel. And this reminds me of the sort of Eddie Lawson time again. They're matte black bars and they've got a nice rigid feel to it. Fully adjustable levers as well. That's all up to date. And then this big petrol tank, which looking down on here, I used to have a GPZ900R, exactly the same sort of colour scheme. And this looks very, very familiar from the top. Very nice. And then this big seat, this is worth a mention because this seat is really comfortable. It's really good. And under here, it's got an amazing amount of storage. It really did surprise me. Let's lift this up. Look at this down here, an absolute cavern in there. It's just got the handbook in there, but that is really deep. So I can get in well past my elbow. It really is massive. So you could get a lot of bits and pieces in there. And it doesn't finish there because under here is a tool roll. But you could get some waterproofs in there, a spare pair of gloves. So plenty of little storage spaces for all your bits and pieces. Let's put that back on there. But it's round the other side. This is what I really like about this bike. You just can't ignore it, that massive brace swinging arm. Look at it. It's very distinctive. There's no other bike running with those. Looks a bit like a special, but I really like it. It's got the eccentric adjusters for the rear wheel spindle. But I think it looks really trick and really nice. All helped off by these fully adjustable twin chocks on the back with the remote reservoirs. Nice and adjustable from the top, bit of gold anodized aluminium. Looks very neat. You've even got a bungee hook there for a bit of luggage on the back. And also 2 decent grab rails there for your old pillion passenger, or perhaps young pillion passenger. Now I've already said it feels manageable, but that's to do it a disservice. It's much more than that. It might not be a sports bike, but with its fully adjustable suspension you can tweak it to please, and as my old PE teacher said, it handles its bulk very well. It's no lightweight at 223 kilos, 20 kilos up on a phaser, but the steering has a light feel to it. The suspension is supple too, soaking up the bumps but not allowing any wallowing. And that front brake is more than just looks, it's a real stunker. Put all this together and you've got a bike that sits where you put it and it doesn't fidget about like lesser mortals might do. Now all through this piece I've been talking about the Kawasaki being big and brawny, and in a way it is, but in another way it isn't. The seat height for one thing, it's low, it's 30mm lower than a phaser or a monster. And something else that is much slower is the price. This will cost you just £1 under £7,000, which has got to be cheap. And I'll tell you what, for your money you get a hell of a lot of metal.
Well, we knew this time had to come, the final day of our West Coast trip, outer limits and beaches on the moon. Amazingly, we were still kept entertained with even more sights to see and places to visit.
On day 6, we're leaving Onich and we're heading south again. We have left this remoteness behind, so we're going to get ourselves into a lot more traffic and so on. But we come down some lovely little spots down here, Onich, where there's some fantastic sights and so on, ending up back at Tyndrum. That's our lunch, then we're south, taking us back down through all the more glens and right back down here where we join the motorway and we end up in Linlithgow.
On a rather drizzly morning, our first stop was just around the corner from our hotel at the River Onich. You should know that there are no valleys in Scotland, they're all glens. And this morning we've already visited one of the most famous, Glen Coe, and we've come down to this one that is no less spectacular, though a little smaller. It's called Onich. The river shares the same name, and it is a treacherous stretch of water out there. People have even kayaked down it. Me, I think I'll stick to my bike and dry land. Throughout the trip we had been so busy we hadn't really had time to talk to Peter properly, so we took some time out of our final day to find out more about Highland Rider. Peter, first of all then, tell me how this came about. Why did you start doing this?
Well, I started this because an idea came to me 3-4 years ago, and I just love biking, and I thought there's nobody in Scotland doing quality tours with quality hotels and organised with a bike, the insurance, the ferries, everything like that, organised for them. Now that takes out a lot of hassle for everybody that come with us. They don't need to think, they just go and enjoy riding our fantastic biking roads. So I thought, well, I'll just put this together.
Now you run tours all the time, it's what you now do for a living. So you've got to know the answer to this, and that is, what is the key to a successful tour? Be it coming with somebody like you or just taking off on your own and doing your own thing. How do you make a good bike tour?
Well, I think safety is one thing, planning is another, and planning is definitely high on the agenda, what you've got to plan for your fuel stops. You find people in the middle of the Highlands running out of fuel that do not know where the nearest petrol station is. In fact, there's been quite a few jokes about that.
And just when you're actually out there leading, when you're riding at the front on your bike, are you still enjoying it, or is it a job?
No, I'm enjoying it. The day I don't enjoy it is the day I won't be up there, and I will be on that bike for a long time.
Excellent, Pete. The final stop on our tour was a little closer to home in the Trossachs, when we visited the infamous Rob Roy's grave. Time then to stretch the legs and get a bit of a sightseeing stop, and actually at quite a significant spot, really. Where are we?
We're in the Brace of Balwhidder, where Rob Roy country, where Rob Roy has lived and died.
And he's here.
He's here, and this is where he lies dead.
Buried in this very graveyard. Just remember, who was Rob Roy then?
Rob Roy was a sort of, he was a cattle dealer in the old days, and there was no such thing as bankers in these days, and the cattle dealers were the bankers, and he knew these hills and glens like the back of his hand, and he was accused of wrongdoing by Montrose. Now, they hunted for him and they persecuted him, and they persecuted all the McGregors, and eventually he got pardoned, and he went back home and he lived in his house in the Braes there, and now he's here.
And he retired in these hills?
He retired in these hills.
Do you know, I reckon if they'd been around, he'd have ridden a bike.
I definitely think he was the type of guy that would ride bikes, definitely.
He'd have ridden a bike, blatting around these hills. Excellent, well we better saddle up and ride ourselves.
Okay,
So,
let's
cheers,
get
Rob.
going.
Take care.
Bye.
Well, that's it. In 6 days, we've done not interstellar mileages, 800 to be precise, but 180 of them were by sea, and the rest were frankly amazing. And if I've learned one thing, it is that you do not need to travel to the other side of the globe to find incredible places to go on a bike. I am exhausted, and I've earned, I think, a bit of a rest.
I think before you have your rest, have a beer, Richard. You deserve it.
Peter, thank you very much. I will.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hi, I'm Jeff Thompson from the Manchester RoSPA Advanced Motorcycle Group. When you're out riding quickly, you can gain enormous advantage by looking as far ahead as possible and planning your ride. And I don't mean just looking at the road. Behind me you can see the road, and then in the distance you can see a village church. That village church tells you that within about 45 seconds time you're going to be approaching a village which will undoubtedly have a 30-mile-an-hour limit. You're prepared for it. Another example of information we can use to help plan our riding is the paintwork on the road. Here we see the arrows pointing to the left, which are indicating that up ahead there's a white line system, double white line system, which means we must be back on our side of the road before that if we were overtaking. Another example of using observations to plan ahead is on my right here there's a farm, and leading to that farm is a hedge and a row of telegraph poles. That's a big clue that there's a junction about to join the road behind me. Okay, we've shown you 3 examples of how you can use observation to plan your riding. I'm sure as you go around the countryside you'll be able to find hundreds more.
And still to come on Two Wheels, there's a security tip from Wayne and more from the Copdock Classic Show.
Welcome to Wayne's wonderful world of bits. Oh, not easy to say, not when you've got other things on your mind. Anyway, what I've done here is I've found these 5 beautiful motorcycles. The riders have come on a day out to a race meeting. When you get to that meeting, you want to lock your bike up securely. So what do? You hunt for a large piece of grass like that so you can put your locking chain round it. Useless, obviously. Smart idea here, because 5 of them have put their front wheels neatly together and put 1 or 2, if there's a small lock, gathered them all together, put the lock round them and secured them sensibly. Because obviously it's a lot more difficult to put 5 bikes in the back of a van that are locked together than maybe 2 bikes that are locked together. Smart lads, aren't they? Now, have you got Axor? Because I could do with this R1.
Welcome back to the Copdock Classic Bike Show. Hope you were watching last week. We've got plenty more to see.
You know, every bike show has its own unique atmosphere, and it's fair to say that the atmosphere at Copdock was very much a family one. Mini motos for the big kids and something, well, less dangerous, shall we say, for the youngsters. The usual mix of stalls selling everything from locks and chains to brand new machines. And for those visitors with a project underway back at home, there was the opportunity to pick up that hard to find part, that last nut, bolt and washer to complete the job. Need a second-hand panel, anyone? There's a good chance this man has one to suit. Or maybe you're after a full bike, a spot of DIY. This stall had what appeared to be a near-complete Triumph 955. Now, the great thing about coming to shows like this is you meet famous people all the time, and here's a famous person, Dave Bickers, star of motocross for many years, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, Dave, just give us a potted history then of your motocross exploits.
Well, I started like when I was 16, and then I went on and won a couple of European championships,
Yeah.
and about half a dozen British championships, and won a few more races, and I'd done it for 25 years and made a living out of it.
Yeah.
But then I got into film and TV work in the stunt side.
Yeah.
And
That's what you do now, isn't it? Because obviously you're not riding competitively now. So you have a a company that does all the big stunts for James Bond and all this sort of stuff?
Yeah, we've worked on the last 5 James Bond movies and Superman and all those sort of things.
Right.
It's not actually work, I call it fun, you know, it's
I bet it is.
better than work.
Do you do any stunts yourself? Do you get involved, or you just set them up?
No, I don't do any of the real stunts. I mean, I did when I began, but I realised there was an opening for somebody just to fix them for the other people to do it.
Right, yeah.
And because there's a lot of nutters out there who do stunts,
Of course there is, yeah.
but, you know, they're not the ones you want to work with, you know.
No, it's a very professional thing, isn't it? Obviously, yeah.
You're very professional.
Absolutely. So what brings you here then, Dave? Do you have a passion for classic machines?
Yeah, I like old bikes and things, and I live just down the road, so
Yeah.
I thought I'd come along and have a look.
I'm speaking to Alan, he's from the Vintage Motorcycle Club. So what is a vintage bike? Well, he's the man that knows. Now I know a veteran motorcycle starts anything pre-1914, then what happens after that?
Well, up to 1930, they're vintage motorcycles,
Right.
and then up to 1939, we have post-vintage motorcycles,
Okay.
and then we have the post-war classification, which is anything that's over 25 years old as at now. So pre-1976 bikes are all eligible for the Vintage Motorcycle Club.
What, in your opinion, makes a classic motorbike then? Something that's sort of made a mark in history, do you reckon?
I think classic bikes really were from the 60s and 70s. Things like the Triumph Trident, Rocket 3, Norton Commando, they're classics in my view.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with you there. Now this is your bike behind, isn't it, the Beezer?
Yes.
Tell us about this.
Well, this is a 1932 1000cc V-twin BSA, which I've had now for 25 years. My wife and I have travelled to Germany, France, Ireland on it. We use it regularly in Vintage Motorcycle Club events. And as you can see, it's looking a little used, but there again, it was restored 25 years ago.
It's an amazing looking machine, and I noticed it has the authentic sort of oil drip on the side, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, so this is known as a total loss oil system. There is no oil tank for the oil to return to. The oil that goes from the oil tank goes into the engine, then lubricates the engine and the primary drive, and the excess is burnt off and exudes onto the road. That's how it was designed.
That's amazing. So now we know why British Beezers leak oil.
Well, certainly Beezers from the 20s and 30s do leak oil because they're total loss oil systems, yes.
And your wife, does she travel in the sidecar?
Yes. In fact, I have a solo vintage motorcycle which she will not go on the back of because she gets a BSA, so that's why she only goes in the sidecar.
Well, you'll remember we met Paul with his very fancy customised Road King. Well, it's a family thing, this, because this is Paul's wife, Jane, and this is her Sportster. It started life as a standard Sportster, did it?
Yeah, it's an 883.
Yeah? And
Yeah.
can I just say as well, before we go on, this too was sat outside in the rain all night.
Yeah.
Don't cover it up.
No, they're bikes to ride. Just happens that they look nice as well.
Well, I agree with you. You've got to ride them. So it started life as an 883. Did you buy it as a standard 883?
We bought it brand new as a standard 883, and it needed a few changes. It was a little bit high for me because I'm only short.
Right.
And Paul decided if I wanted to do something with it,
Okay.
and I left it to him. And this is what I got.
It's not bad, is it?
No.
You went and bought them wheels at a custom place. Would cost you a couple of £1,000 a pair.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of money. What is it worth? Because the standard bike's not that expensive, is it? Less than £6,000 you could buy
Yeah,
one of these.
about 5.5, I think, the standard bike.
What's it up to now? Do you know?
About 15.
£15.
We haven't really sat and added it all up.
I just can't believe that you leave it out in the rain. How long does it take you to clean it? Do you clean it or do you clean it?
I clean it. Everybody thinks we spend hours and hours, but we don't.
Of course you do. It must take you hours to clean this.
Not really, not unless it gets really, really muddy and dirt. I mean, when we did 900 miles in the rain down to Saint-Tropez, it took us 3 hours to clean.
Blimey.
But to actually get it clean after a normal ride, about an hour and a half if we're lucky.
Now, you know your modern fancy sports bikes now. You look at your modern sports bikes and they're covered in bodywork, aren't they? Plastic fairings, you can't see anything. You can't see the engines at all on them these days. Well, just to show you that nothing's new. They were doing it years ago. Look at this. This is a Vincent Black Knight, this, 1955. Totally enclosed, the ultimate in weather protection. Can't see anything. But if you want to know what's under there, you just look at this one, because this is a Vincent Rapide, and underneath that is this. And then there's another little association with a couple of Vincents. There's one called the Black Prince. Now, the Black Prince is a black shadow with a body kit on. Okay? Black Knight is a Rapide with a body kit on. Confusion, isn't it?
Amazing what a group of guys can do to get a show together like this.
It just shows you what you can achieve, doesn't it? But a bit of organisation and a bit of commitment and motivation. Good, it started off as a little thing in a village hall, and now what?
It's grown huge.
Thousands, there's probably 10,000 people here, which is not bad for a place in the middle of nowhere. Because we are in the middle of nowhere, bloody Suffolk.
Yeah, I know, and you had a really good night, didn't you, on the town in Ipswich last night?
It could have been better, actually. If anyone knows where to get a decent pint in Ipswich, will you please let me know, because we couldn't find one. Or a good curry.
All you have to do is wait for this show next year, and then you can get a real ale from the bar.
I can, they've got real ale.
I know.
I've got to drive home 250 miles. But it's been a good show, some nice bikes.
It has, certainly has. I've loved looking at the vintage bikes here. Superb.
Some smart Harley Customs as well.
Yeah, really shiny.
You like your old stuff, don't you?
I do like the old stuff. Yeah, if it's old and it's still going, it's my cup of tea.
There you go. Well, there's a chance for me yet then. Anyway, it's getting cold and I'm going for a brew.
I'm freezing too. You got to kiss a helmet, you know.
I did. Well,
I'm really jealous.
Well, we can't have you kissing helmets, can we? Anyway, on that note, I'm going for a brew and we'll see you next week. And on next week's show, Jeff is in his element as he wanders round some old Japanese classics at the Copdock Classic Bike Show.